Hey, what's up you guys? Rising in 2007 again. Back again for another vlog. Today I'm going to talk about Avatar Legend of Korra. Specifically, the 5th episode that came out yesterday. I thought it was a pretty interesting episode. I feel like... Well, hold on, let me backtrack a little bit. If you saw last week's episode, you see that in last week's episode that the entire episode was about Amon and Korra's Korra and Amon's little confrontation or whatever, and then at the end of the episode, when Korra actually meets with Amon for the second time, because she saw him the first time in the 3rd episode, when she interacts with Amon, Amon's basically looks like he's about to take her bending away or whatever. He knocks her out. Then we see this flashback of Aang, Toph, and Sokka, some guy's eyes, which I believe is Yukon, because in the episode, one of the people on the console, I believe his name is Tarlok, he mentions how Aang dealt with this guy named Yukon, and that they should build a task force to, deal with Amon and bring him to justice or whatever. Anyway, Korra has a flashback of Aang, Sokka, and Toph. We see Aang chasing after somebody, and then Korra wakes up. And at the end of the episode, you're kind of figuring like, oh, they might, build on to this in the next episode, but they don't. They decide to, like, I guess, hold off from that little aspect for another later episode. I don't know. Anyway, this episode basically, the main things that happen in this episode are pro bending, which was in the preview for last week's episode after you finished it. It shows pro bending a lot. It's pro bending, and then this episode you find out, basically, you end up having this love triangle, love square thing. We find out that, or if it wasn't already obvious, anyway, we fully realize that Korra has a crush on Mako. And if it also wasn't fully obvious, Bolin has a crush on Korra. We also find out today that, and this wasn't obvious at all, we also find out that Mako has a crush, likes Korra, but also likes Asami, but because Bolin likes Korra and Korra likes Mako, it creates this really funky love square triangle thing. It's pretty, I want to say it's odd, interesting at the same time, because I'm wondering, like, when you actually watch the episode, you see that Korra and Bolin seem to have a lot in common, yet Korra doesn't seem to like Bolin that way. She likes Mako, which is understandable, because Mako has the demeanor that both girls probably find interesting. To me, in my opinion, I think if this love progresses how I think it's gonna progress, I feel like Mako's gonna end up breaking up with Asami, and then Korra's gonna end up with Mako. But that seems, kind of obvious. Like that's something you would expect. Honestly, I would find it much more interesting if Korra somehow ended up with Bolin, in the sense for her love interest or whatever. But enough about that. The pro bending. The Fire Ferrets like go through what, two or three matches and end up in the finals for the pro bending arena or whatever. The first match they fight in the episode, like they're just kicking ass, like they're like perfect sync or whatever, beat the shit out of the people they're fighting. Next fight, because of the next fight isn't quite as good because of the fact that because Mako turned, well, hold on, let me backtrack a little bit again. Korra ends up telling Mako that she likes him, but he turns her down. And then Bolin goes on a date with Korra, and because of this, Mako thinks that Korra is trying to get back at him, and Korra feels that Mako is jealous, which is true. And because of this, it creates animosity between the two. And in their second match, they're all out of whack, and they end up having to rely on Bolin to finish the match, because what happens is in their second fight, it's basically a tie. They end up going into overtime. Bolin basically tells Mako not to be the one to go into overtime because of the fact that because he's pissed at Korra, his mindset his mindset isn't in the proper place in order for him to do this. Korra, who's in basically the same mindset, can't really do it either. So Bolin does it, and much to my surprise, like I was kind of skeptical in a way about Bolin because of the fact that when we see him fight the chi blockers, although in his defense, this is not Toph, this is not Qatar, this is not Aang. They're not uber badass and beating shit at people's asses. This is a more general peaceful time, and people don't necessarily have to fight. So yeah, Bolin seems to be lacking in that regard. But in the pro bending arena, we see in this episode, Bolin was pretty freaking awesome. He's pretty damn skillful. Like, legit. Anyway, after that, the whole love triangle square thing gets a little complicated because of the fact that Korra ends up kissing Mako, and at this particular scene, I'm thinking, oh shit, she's kissing Mako, and oh, I bet you that Asami's going to be there. But no, much to my surprise, Bolin was there instead, and Bolin just starts crying. Surprisingly enough, I was not expecting that kind of characterization, because even though Bolin's, I guess kind of childish, I wouldn't think of him as the type to, start crying and like run off. I figured he'd be the type to, punch his brother and walk off in anger. And after all that mess, the third pro bending fight, it's all out of whack because of the whole love triangle thing. Bolin's depressed. Mako's angry. The two of them basically give up, and then Korra ends up winning the match for them, being badass, using aerobatics or aerobatics? Aerobatics or whatever, and wins the match for them. And then they end up in the finals, and they're going to have to fight, I forget the team name, but earlier on in the episode, we see this guy, whose name I can't recall right now, who I refer to as the Queen, because, I don't know, he just strikes me as, yeah. Anyway, this guy's team, they're going to end up facing Korra in the finals or whatever. They go and they beat these guys, they end up fighting after like 30 seconds or whatever. So Korra's team and them are going to fighting them in the pro bending arena. Other things interesting that happened in this episode. As Uber Hikari pointed out in his video for this episode, this guy, whose name I can't recall right now, is essentially another antagonist for Korra, or as rival, whatever, for Korra. But it's not, obviously not in the same sense as Korra and Amon, where Korra's going to have to, possibly, I don't know, kill him or something. I don't know. That's just a possible thought. This other guy's like Korra's basic antagonist for pro bending or whatever. And that's basically it for what really happens in this episode. It's a pretty good episode. A lot of action, which I actually enjoy. I enjoy action in TV shows. The character development and characterization was pretty interesting. We see the mindsets. We get to see the psychologicalness of all the characters: Mako, Bolin, and Korra. Which, interesting enough, when you think of Korra, you think of like a really tough girl. Even though we see in the 4th episode she has her vulnerabilities, Korra still, even though Korra is a major tomboy, she still has her girlish charms, which is good because even though she has the persona of a character that's like fiery and stubborn, she still has very feminine qualities, which is good because that might hopefully, as her character develops, she will end up like every other character that has that persona. She might end up different, which might which more than likely might have something to do with the fact that she's a girl rather than a guy. Because guy characters with the personality that Korra has wasn't the same. But because Korra is a female, and females usually don't have that persona, she might develop slightly differently than the stereotype. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. Rising 2007, out.